You've probably heard of Enhance Pickleball. They're a large presence on YouTube and Instagram offering tips and tutorials for the game. And they're also the creator of the Dinkmaster, a training tool that you might be familiar with as well. But did you know that they made a paddle? In this video, we're talking about the Enhance Pickleball Banger, a paddle that lives up to its name, but maybe not in the way that you'd think. As always, Connor and the team at Enhance Pickleball did send me this paddle, but I wasn't paid and I get to say whatever I want in this video. And if you'd like to help this channel out while saving a little bit on this paddle, you can use the code PickleballBlast, which will get you $20 off, bringing this paddle down to just $140, which for an edgeless paddle, and a good one at that, is a pretty good deal. And if you don't have time for the in-depth review, no worries, I've got you. The Enhance Pickleball Banger is a 14mm hybrid-shaped edgeless paddle that boasts a low swing weight, a poppy core with perimeter edge foam, and an injected foam handle to reduce vibrations. It's named the Banger presumably to highlight its power, which I found to be above average, but above all, the Banger is an incredibly stable edgeless paddle that offers a much larger sweet spot than I've found on most edgeless paddles. And if you're like me and you want to dive deep into this paddle, then let's get to it, starting with the basics. The Enhance Pickleball Banger is hybrid shaped, 14mm and edgeless. It features a T700 carbon fiber face, an advertised static weight of 7.9 ounces, give or take a little, a swing weight of 111, twist weight of 6.18, handle length of 5.4 inches, and a circumference of 4.1 inches. It retails for $160, but that comes down to just $140 with the discount. With those out of the way, let's talk about a few different categories that are important to consider when choosing whether or not to buy a paddle. And because I don't want this to get buried late in the video, I want to quickly point out one thing that I really like with the design of this paddle, which is that they marked the optimal areas to add weight along the perimeter of the paddle. You can of course use whatever you want, but they do sell these pre-cut weight pods that I'll show that fit these spots perfectly. I think this is a good move as not everybody feels confident in weighting their setup, and this takes most of the guesswork away, making it much more accessible for most people. Moving on to power, and when I first heard about this paddle, I think based on the name, I expected this to be a pure power paddle. And I don't think it is that, but I definitely prefer it this way. I actually think, all in all, this is the best edgeless paddle that I've played with, which admittedly is not a paddle type that I'm usually drawn to, but I played very well with this paddle from the very first game. With that said, the power is still above average for me, with my serve speeds coming in at an average of 54.6 miles per hour, which is hitting plenty hard for my game. Going into pop, and I found the pop on this to once again be above average. In fact, I think you're gonna find that is kind of a recurring theme with this paddle. Everything is just pretty solid. No major flaws, but probably not the absolute best paddle in any one category, which I think for most people is going to be the best choice in a paddle. I tested punch volleys for this one and found an average of 33 miles per hour. This was the first time I tested this with a radar though, so I don't have a whole lot to compare it to. The stability of this paddle has to be approached from the perspective of it being an edgeless paddle, and with that taken into consideration, I feel it's above average here as well. But it's important to also talk about this paddle compared to the market as a whole, and this probably is going to be the slight downside of this paddle. While it feels incredibly consistent to me and much more stable than I expected, the twist weight is a little lower than average compared to a non-edgeless paddle. However, that's stock and you can weight this up a bit to compensate for that if you'd like. Moving on to control and feel, and I really liked the touch on this. Again, better than I expected. I found I was able to dink, drop, and reset from the very first game that I played with this paddle. I think the consistent feel played a big role in that, as well as the larger than normal sweet spot, especially compared to other edgeless paddles. The feel of this paddle isn't entirely soft, but for an edgeless 14mm paddle, it has a softer feel than I thought it would have. On that note, let's move on to spin, as I found that softer than expected touch to in turn lead to better than expected dwell time, and I found myself having no issues shaping shots with this paddle. I think it would be safe to put the spin on this thing between its very gritty surface and good dwell time, definitely above the 2000 RPM mark. The speed of this paddle is another place where it really shines. One of the benefits of an edgeless paddle is a lower swing weight, which feels a touch faster at the net and helps out for hand battles. Add to that the Enhance Pickleball Banger not only has a pretty low swing weight, but it also feels distinctly not head heavy, and this made for a lot of confidence at the net for me. And lastly, visually, I think this is a nice looking paddle. The graphics might not be entirely for me, but I still think it looks good. And I like the pop of color with the blue or purple handle. All in all, I was incredibly impressed and almost caught off guard by how much I enjoyed this paddle. And for a first real paddle, I think Connor and his team at Enhance Pickleball absolutely knocked it out of the park. As somebody who leans 16 millimeters and shies away from edgeless paddles, I really should not have enjoyed this, but found myself playing well from the start. So while it may not be a banger in the sense of relentless power at the cost of everything else, I think it's safe to say it is definitely a banger in the sense that it's a great paddle and they should be proud of this release. And I think this would be a great paddle for somebody who is currently using an edgeless paddle and enjoys the low swing weight, but maybe wants to switch to something with a bigger sweet spot and probably an uptick in pop, power, or spin as well. It could also be a great venture as a first edgeless paddle if you've always been intrigued by the idea, but like me, haven't loved other edgeless paddles that you've played with. I hope to see more paddles from Enhance Pickleball as time goes on, and I hope they're able to continually release paddles that give an incredibly consistent experience and perform better than expected, just like the Banger does. If you've got any questions about the Banger, drop them down below in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.